Hey everybody, Finbar here, and today I want to talk about cultivating creativity using the Maschine Plus. Particularly, I want to actually demonstrate the rebuilding of the track Sunset by the Midnight and how I rebuilt that using the Maschine Plus in standalone mode, managing its CPU power, all its internal effects, internal automation, internal synth engine, sampling, live loop, the whole thing. So why did I do this video and who is this video for? Let's talk about who this video is for. This video is for people like me. So I'm not traditionally what you would call a beat maker. I'm not an electronic artist, even though I do bits of electronic music in my compositional stuff. So I'm a composer, rock musician, war guitar player. And, you know, I've been searching for a long time how to sort of explode my creativity. When I was young, I used to find with a very little bit of gear, I used to be really, really creative. And then the more gear I've got over the years in different studios around the world, I found myself not thinking about my workflow from a creative ideation perspective, was more building production stuff. And I kept buying gear, and it actually got me further and further and further away from being able to be inspired, find that spark, get the ideas, put them down quickly. And it used to sort of really bug me. It's only recently after my last album, The Code, did I really get into this sort of this mindset about trying to think about, well, what are the things that I can do to unbundle me from these things that are blocking my creativity? And after a bit of searching around, I figured out the Maschine Plus was really the tool that's going to help me do that. So if you don't know what the Maschine Plus is, it's basically a standalone, I call it a tactile audio workstation. It's like it has basically everything you need in a standalone box. Now, before this, I did have the Maschine Mark III, but I found the Maschine Mark III was plugged in my computer with all my plugins. Was again, I was so focused on trying to find the right sound, and it actually became a hindrance for me to just get the ideas out. So I found that the standalone box was actually far better for me. It got me to really know the insights of the box inside out. So without rabbiting on, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this video, is because I think I've got a different perspective on why I think the Maschine Plus is a better choice than the Maschine Mark III, purely because it has constraints, and those constraints allow you to really use your creative process to understand how to get the best out of the box. I've heard a lot of people talk about its limited capability in terms of CPU power, and I find if you know what you're doing with this thing, and I don't know what I'm doing, this is my very first track with a box, but I'm hitting 65% CPU with like 16 completely different tracks with effects and routing and automation, and I've still got plenty of headroom left. So I find it I find some of those comments, for me, I don't get it. Like I think the box has got a ton of power, and especially then if you plug it into the computer, there are a few little things that need to be improved. But I think for someone like me who wants to explore creativity, this is a great box. So Maschine Plus for non-beat makers, so to speak. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to get into the track. I'm going to show you how I rebuilt it. This isn't a Maschine Plus tutorial. It's more just an overview of me rebuilding the track Sunset by the Midnight, and how this box can do the whole thing. Anyway, let's go. Okay, so going through the different pad setup here. So I have, these things are the different groups. Now, I'm not going to go through a Maschine tutorial, but the way I've set this up is each one of these, I've set this up pretty much as a track, but each one of these can actually have a number of different samples, loops, synthesizers in them. But the way I've set it up in a lot of the cases is this is the individual twinkle sound, which I've recorded from the original track. And that's running from a sampler, and you might be able to see the sample running there. So I recorded that loop from the actual track itself, and that's in this first pad bank here. The second pad bank is the waiting kit, the waiting game kit. And really, quite simply, this track is very simple. It's just got hit, snare, hat, and crash. And so basically each one of these again is a sample. So you can have a look at that. Snare, hat, crash. So I loaded them up as one shots by going to browse mode and going to one shots and finding the different sounds and then loading them into individual pads. So I have the twinkle sound kit. It's got 4 samples in it. The next one in the pad mode is my basically my synths. So if I've got a number of different synths in here. If I select the first one, I've got the poly synth. If I select the second one, I've got like a paddy sort of sound. So there's a number of different synths in here. That's the third pad bank. The fourth one is a synth engine. So if I go back to the previous one just for a second and look at those synths, if I look at them, this one is called the poly synth. This is an internal synth inside the machine, and this one here is an FM8 called Arctic Silver, and this one here, the sound, is internal context instrument called Contemporary Analog Melody. You'll hear that in a minute. Then on this one I actually have the bass synthesizer. So it's the bass synth here, and the way this is the internal bass synthesizer, which is created through going to my internal instruments and looking down at the bass synth. And I basically played around with just the different filter and resonance to get the... You can see the actual pattern written in there, which I'll go through in a minute. Back to pad mode, toms. Again, these are individual samples, and I play those up. So they're loaded into that bank. Now this bank here are the actual vocal samples. So you probably can't read here, but what I've done is I've taken the a cappella vocals from the Sunset, from the Bandcamp, from the Midnight.
I just feel like
and what I did was I actually just took the whole sample, which is here, and then sliced it up. And so on the different pads, I've taken it and just split it out and sliced it onto the different pads. So you can see that's the... Okay, so I basically cut it out and I could play them into the pads. This bank here is my effects bank. And what I have here is I have an actual reverb, which I'm wiring pads into it. And this is the beat delay and another different beat delay. And then moving on to the second group of pads, I have a massive synthesizer, which is the Angel Bells. Okay, on this one. So on, so on, so on. And then we go to, what have I got here? Another pad. Then I've got the sine wave bass, which happens in the middle 8. And then I've got a riser, which you can see. And then last but not least, I have in this bank, I have the guitar solo. And the way I did that was I actually played the guitar part in, sampled it all, put it, and then cut it up over the pads and put it into a clip. So they're the different pad layouts, and that's how many sounds I've got running in this different setup. So the way I set it up in Maschine in the first place was I set up the core grooves in what's called ideas mode. And in each one of these modes, it's basically different groups of different patterns. So this one here, if I play it, has this twinkle on it. This one, you can see the kit is lit up. It's got different patterns on here. You can see now the synth is coming in. So basically what you do is you lay things up, whereby I can move the drum pattern by, let's go, where it went. Okay, so there's different patterns I can assign to different parts. But anyway, so that's pretty much how it goes. And now let me just go through the loading again. So the way I do it is every time I make a change, I've got different versions of the song here. So I'm just going to load the last fresh version, discard that, load it up. And here we are. So we're now in. So now this is what's called the song mode. It's very much like a door. So I've got different sections in the song. So I can jump around. And And these different sections are created with separate lengths, and then I can assign patterns in there. So what I'm going to do is do a bit of a playthrough. I'm going to start soloing some sounds, and you can hear how it's all mixed together. I'll actually go into the mixer view and give you an example of how things are going, and then I'll run through the different... As I'm playing through this track, I'll be soloing, highlighting some things, but it'll just give you an idea that how in standalone mode I've actually put this whole thing together. So let's start from the beginning. Just the drums. Synths.
I've been stuck here my whole life. There must be something else out there, waiting, you know, just for us.
Now I've got the lead synth coming in,
We could run away.
which is just around here. Now it's very low because the effects.
I don't even care where we go. Just far away from here. I'll come with you.
Faked our deaths,
Vocal
lit a match,
by itself. You can see it on the mixer view.
close the door,
Take it out.
waited for the flash,
Hit.
paid in cash.
Jump to the next bang.
Lazarus will come. Make our home one suitcase and half a plan. Follow the wolves and sing along. Pass the voices to the song. They say it's darkest before the dawn. We've been in this town for far too long. They say it's darkest before the dawn. We're moving on, we're moving on, we're moving on. Sunset, no regrets. First no good love. It tastes so sweet, it hurts a
So there's the effects buzz if I want to wind up. Okay, we've got riser coming up. there we are. Turn it down. There you go.